Hey everyone, Mike Burke here with InsideRealEstatePhotography.com, and in this free full course video, I'm going to take you through everything you need to know to do real estate photography. So this video is a full course in real estate photography, everything you need to know to do real estate photography and start a real estate photography business will be covered in this course, including gear recommendations, camera settings, how to shoot, edit, and deliver your images to your clients, also some business tips on pricing your services, and how to acquire new clients. I will not be baiting you here or holding back any information in this video in order to sell you a course or something like that, like you see a lot here on YouTube. This video is the full course and it's completely free. I know how frustrating it is to watch a video on YouTube only to find out you're only getting part of the information, and in order to get the whole picture, you have to pay them or buy their course. As I stated in my mission statement, I will never do something like that here on this channel. That's part of the reason why I started a YouTube channel to begin with, because I know how frustrating it is. Maybe I'm crazy for putting out all this information for free, and maybe I'm leaving money on the table, but that's just how I do things. And if any of you guys learned something from it and I help somebody out there, then mission accomplished. The information being presented in this video comes directly from personally being a real estate photographer for over a decade and shooting thousands of homes. If you do want to show some sort of support, I simply ask that you just like this video and subscribe to my channel. By doing so, you help boost my channel and helps me reach more people. As you may or may not know, I've covered a lot of these topics on this channel before. This video is sort of a remake of a video I did a while back called Real Estate Photography Basics, which up until now has been the most successful video I've ever released, which currently has over 420,000 views. That video though was released back in 2020, so this video will contain updated information and also go considerably more in depth and also be more comprehensive. One more thing I will say as well is that I've had multiple people contact me to tell me they became full-time real estate photographers because of what they learned from watching that Real Estate Photography Basics video. Some of which, like myself, are already making over 6 figures doing this sort of work. No, I'm not telling you this to brag by any means. I'm simply trying to point out that the information presented in this video is tried and true and proven to be successful, as it has been for me and other people as well. I also want to mention up front that the method being demonstrated in this video will involve shooting exposure brackets, or HDR as many people call it, which will be explained in greater detail later in this video. This is the most efficient and most widely used method in the real estate photography industry, which is why it will be the method being demonstrated in this video, and also why it's the method that I recommend to most people. It's also the most straightforward and requires the least amount of gear, so if you're just starting out, I definitely think it's the way to go. There's another popular method called flambient or flash ambient blending, which involves a flash. That method will not be covered in this particular video. Flambient is a very effective method as well, but it is a little more advanced, requires more gear, and it is not as widely used. I do cover flambient in multiple videos here on my channel, so feel free to check those out if you're interested. Also, I will have a full course on flambient some point in the future. Okay, so this video is pretty epic. There's a lot of great information in it, so let's strap in and get started. Before we continue on with this video, I just want to share a quick word about our sponsor, PixelMob. Are you looking for a professional real estate photo editor to help lighten your workload? Are you having a hard time finding a good and reliable editor, or don't even know where to look for one? Or maybe you just personally struggle with editing and can't seem to achieve the professional end result that you've been looking for? If any of this sounds like you should definitely check out PixelMob. PixelMob helps take the guesswork out of finding a reputable editor and connects you with the right people to do the job. PixelMob is an awesome website that links you up with available editors capable of doing just about any sort of real estate photo editing you can imagine, including HDR blending, flambient, virtual staging, object removal, etc. The best part of all is that PixelMob vets all the editors prior to allowing them onto their platform to ensure that they can indeed deliver on what they say they can. I also really like that there's a peer review system where photographers can rate the editors from 1 to 5 stars, giving you further tools and helping you choose the best editor to work with for your particular job. The editor also does not get paid until you are satisfied with your order. If you've ever been in the search for an editor and tried a few out, then you know full well there's been such a sore need for something like PixelMob in our industry, and I really think a lot of us real estate photographers can benefit from this service. It's completely free to sign up, and if you use my link pixelmob.com/IREP, you will receive $5 in credit towards your first order, so there's no reason to at least not give it a try. You'll also find that link down in the description of this video. So first things first, let's talk about the gear you'll need to do real estate photography. The good news is, as far as types of photography go, real estate photography is probably the genre of photography that requires one of the lowest upfront investments. There are many different options out there as far as gear is concerned, but in essence, all you really need to do real estate photography is a decent tripod, preferably with a long center column, a tripod head with leveling capability, a camera that can shoot auto exposure brackets, and a wide angle lens. I will now go over my recommendations for these items, and I will also link to my recommended items down in the description below. Let's start with the tripod. The tripod I recommend is the Slick 700DX Pro tripod legs, which are reasonably priced at $120. These are great tripod legs, they're super sturdy, and they're more or less built like a tank. I use these tripod legs day in and day out, and they just keep going strong. I only replaced them once because the joints got a little too loose, but that was after like 4 years of use. The main feature of this tripod is that it has a super long center column, which allows you to change the camera height over a pretty large range without having to adjust the tripod legs themselves. This is an extremely important feature for real estate photography because we constantly have to change the height of our camera. I cannot stress this enough, it'll save you so much time and frustration. I highly recommend this tripod. Let's talk about the tripod head now as well. You will need some sort of tripod head that allows you to make quick leveling adjustments. There are a few viable and effective options out there for this, and it'll come down to preference, but my personal preference is to have a leveling base where you can just adjust the knobs to level out the camera, and you can have whatever tripod head you want on top of that. I personally have a Benro S6 fluid video head on top, which allows me to do fluid video pans or tilts. It's just a more versatile setup for me personally since I shoot a lot of photo and video. Another popular option is a three-way geared head like the Benro GD3WH, which I also own. This would be my second choice. I just prefer the leveling base because I'm faster with it, and again, it's just more versatile for the type of shooting that I do. The other option I will mention as well is a ball head. This will work, but the problem I have with it is every time you loosen it, the camera's just flopping all around. It just makes it more frustrating and time consuming to level the camera out. The other two options I mentioned are much more precise and better for real estate photography in my opinion. Let's discuss cameras. Again, there are many different viable options out there. Personally, I am a Sony shooter, so I'm gonna recommend some Sony options because that's the brand that I've been using for years now, and that's the brand I'm most familiar and experienced with at this particular time. If your budget allows, my top choice would be one of the full-frame Sony cameras out there. I personally own an A7S III, an A7 IV, and an A7 III. Any of those would be a good option in my opinion. My current go-to camera is my Sony A7S III, which may sound kind of weird because it's marketed more towards video shooting and it's only 12 megapixels. It's for these reasons though, in my opinion, I think it's the perfect all-around real estate camera. You don't need a lot of resolution to shoot real estate photography, as the images are pretty much exclusively being used on the internet, and we're downsizing them considerably for delivery to our clients for use on the web. The 12 megapixels keeps the raw files light and easy to manage and edit, and also the camera shoots 4K video in 10-bit, 120 frames per second, which is great for real estate videos. These are some of the reasons why the A7S III is my camera of choice for real estate photography. However, it is rather expensive at $3,500, which I realize will deter a lot of people from going this route. That being said, my next camera of choice would be the Sony A7 IV. Again, another great all-around camera for shooting photo and video. It just doesn't have as rich of features in the video department as the A7S III does. For instance, it only shoots 120 frames per second in 1080, not 4K like the A7S III does, which is my preferred frame rate for shooting real estate videos. It still does do a fine job shooting video though, so this is by no means a deal breaker. It does shoot 4K 60 frames per second though, which is nice. It's just not quite as slowed down as 120 frames per second is, which is my preference. Now you may be thinking, why am I talking so much about video features? This is a course on real estate photography. Well, video features are something you want to keep in mind when buying a camera, because even if you don't start out shooting real estate videos, you eventually will be. Video is a huge part of the real estate photography industry, and it's only going up from here. Another thing I will mention is that both the A7 IV and A7S III have the fully articulating screen, which is a nice feature to have for real estate photography. You want some sort of movable screen to see the shots that you're taking, especially with the tripod down low or high or whatever. It just makes things so much easier. The A7 III does not have a fully articulating screen, but it does have a tiltable screen, which does the job. It's just not quite as versatile. By the way, the A7 IV price tag is about $2,500. Even though it's an older model, the Sony A7 III is still a really good choice for real estate photography in my opinion, and can hold up to today's standards. As far as real estate is concerned, it really covers all the bases and really has a lot of the same capabilities as the A7 IV does in a lot of ways. It doesn't have the fully articulating screen, as I mentioned. It has an older menu system in the camera. It also has an older body style, but it has the ability to shoot brackets and also has the ability to shoot video at 1080, 120 frames per second. The A7 IV does have the ability to shoot 10-bit video, but at 1080, 120 frames per second, the A7 IV only has the ability to shoot an 8-bit. So from a real estate photography standpoint, shooting real estate videos, if you want to shoot 120 frames per second video, there really is no technical advantage of the A7 IV over the A7 III. At the time of making this video, the A7 III is priced at $1,700, which is $800 cheaper than the A7 IV. You could probably find one even cheaper used if you want to go that route. I do own both cameras, and I will say the A7 IV is nicer to use and there's nice upgraded features if you do other photo and video shooting. But if you're strictly shooting real estate, the A7 III really may be the way to go. As I said, there's no real technical advantage of the A7 IV over the A7 III in this type of shooting. And you can take that $800 you saved and put it towards a lens. Let's now discuss lenses to go with these cameras. If you're shooting full frame like one of the cameras I just mentioned, then my preferred focal range for shooting real estate is a 16 to 35mm zoom lens. Pretty much all major camera brands have a lens in their lineup with this focal range. My number one recommendation for these Sony cameras and my personal go-to lens for real estate photography is the 16 to 35mm f2.8 G Master lens. This lens yields fantastic image quality. Also, the f2.8 comes in handy for video shooting and also for detail shots for photos when you want to blur the background a little bit and have a little shallow depth of field. The problem with this lens though is that it's rather expensive at $2,200. They just announced a version 2 of the lens that's smaller, lighter, and has improved optics, but you can still buy the version 1 new for a couple $100 cheaper at $2,000. I have the version 1, I don't have the version 2 yet. I'm not sure if I will get the version 2, I'm not sure how much better it will be. I will say though that since they just announced the version 2, a lot of the version 1s may be hitting the used market and you may be able to scoop one of those up at a good price. If this lens is too expensive for you, which it very well may be, especially if you're just starting out, then my second recommendation would be the Zeiss 16 to 35mm f4 lens. I used this lens for many years before finally coughing up the extra money to get the G Master a few years back. This lens is a great choice as well. It's not quite as versatile as the G Master, being only f4, and the quality is not quite as good, but it will get the job done and do it pretty well. The price, it was priced originally around $1,500 a few years ago, but now it looks like it's selling for around $1,000 new, which is a pretty good deal. And of course, if you could find one used, you might even be able to get it cheaper. So those two lenses will be my top two choices for the Sony full frame cameras. There are some 12 to 24mm zoom lenses in the Sony lineup that would work for real estate photography as well. I just feel 12mm is too wide for real estate photography. It's too distorted and extreme in my opinion. Also, the 12 to 24mm lenses have a protruding front element on them, which doesn't allow you to put a filter on there. I like to use a circular polarizer filter, so you wouldn't be able to do that with a 12 to 24mm lens either. If you're looking for a more budget-friendly camera and lens setup for real estate photography, you may want to consider one of the crop sensor cameras in the Sony lineup, along with the 10 to 18mm Sony lens that's made specifically for use on the crop sensor cameras. At the time of the making of this video, the A6700 just got announced, which is a crop sensor camera, and even has the ability to shoot 4K at 120 frames per second like my A7S III does at less than half the cost at $1,400, which is very impressive. There are even cheaper options in the lineup, such as the A6400, which is priced at $750. Pretty much any camera in the A6000 lineup is a viable option for real estate photography. You may even be able to find some of the older models used pretty cheap. Another piece of equipment I would recommend is a remote for your camera. If you're using one of the Sony cameras, then I would recommend the Sony Remote Commander, which is a Bluetooth remote. It's great because you can trigger the camera from just about anywhere in the house if you needed to, being that it's Bluetooth enabled. A remote comes in handy for a couple of good reasons. For one, it's just general good practice not to be pressing the shutter button on the camera physically and just triggering it with a remote instead, because you might nudge or move the camera by accident. Also, you might be in tight space, say your camera's wedged into the corner of a room and you can't even stand behind it without being in the picture, so you need to get out of the room to trigger the camera. Or maybe there's a mirror, maybe you're shooting a bathroom, there's a mirror or a glass shower door and you're in the reflection, so you need to step out of the room and trigger the camera remotely so you're not in the reflection. Again, it's just an essential piece of gear for real estate photography in my opinion, and I highly recommend having one. The other piece of equipment I want to discuss is a circular polarizer filter. As I mentioned before, I use one of these filters every single day for my real estate photography. What this filter mainly does is reduces glares or reflections, such as off a hardwood floor for instance. I made a video on this topic that I'll link to up on the screen right now that goes into this in greater detail. In my opinion, it really helps the image. You need to really get a good quality one though. If you get a cheap one, it's gonna hurt your image more than help it. I recommend the Zeiss one. That's the one I personally use and I get good results out of it. Just make sure you get the proper thread size for the lens that you're using. Now this isn't an essential piece of gear. This is something that you could probably go without at the beginning if you're looking to save some money and just get yourself going. This is something you could add into your gear kit later on. Okay, so that just about sums up the gear. The other thing I'll mention is, of course, you want a powerful enough computer to be able to edit all these photos and videos on. I have recommendations for that down in the description below, along with links to all these items that I mentioned in this section. Okay, so now that we're wrapped up with that, let's talk about camera settings. Okay, now let's get straight into camera settings. The first thing I want to do is turn my camera dial to A, which is aperture priority mode. In this mode, we'll set our aperture and our ISO. The shutter speed will be determined automatically. I'm going to set my aperture to f8. The reason for f8 is because it has a large depth of field, so theoretically everything in our image from front to back should be sharp and in focus. Now we need to set our ISO. I personally set my ISO to 400 and I leave it there. It helps fire off my brackets faster and helps me get in and out of a shoot quicker. Theoretically, the higher your ISO number is, the more grain and noise you're introducing into your image. These Sony cameras though handle noise really well, so there's no perceptible difference to me personally between 400 and 100 ISO. So I leave mine at 400 because, like I said, it just gets me in and out a little bit quicker. Crop sensor cameras don't handle noise as well as the full frame cameras, so if you're using one of those, you might want to consider setting it to 100 instead of 400. You can test this out though, shoot one at 400 and 100 and see if you can tell any difference. If you're unsure what to do here, or your particular camera, how it handles noise, just leave it set to 100 and be safe. Now that we have our exposure settings set, let's talk about some other settings, starting with drive mode. Drive mode is where you'll be able to set your camera to shoot multiple exposures or bracketed images. You can find drive mode in the menu on the Sony cameras, and you can also access it by hitting the left button on the scroll wheel on the back of the camera typically. Here I want to select continuous bracket, and I'm going to go over to 2.0 EV 5 image. With this setting, the camera will automatically shoot 5 images that are 2 stops apart. You'll have 1 median exposure and then 2 exposures that are darker and 2 exposures that are brighter. Now in the menu underneath drive mode, you'll see bracket settings. If you go in there and select self timer during bracket and select 2 seconds, now if you press the shutter on the remote or the camera, there'll be a 2-second timer before the camera fires off the 5 brackets. Speaking of the remote, we need to set up the camera to be able to receive a signal from the remote control. Under the network tab in the menu, first scroll down to Bluetooth, then go to Bluetooth function and set that to on. Next, go back out to the network tab and under the transfer/remote tab, scroll down to Bluetooth remote control and set that to on. Now you need to pair the remote to the camera. If you go to Bluetooth under the network tab, then pairing, and now hold down the shutter button and the plus button on the remote till the red light starts blinking. Now the remote should pair to the camera. A couple other important settings to set are as follows. If you go to the shooting tab in the menu and then go to image quality and then to file format, set that to RAW. Underneath you'll see RAW file type and you can leave that on compressed. Next, if you scroll down to aspect ratio, you'll want to set that to 3:2. Now if you go to the exposure/color tab and go down to the white balance and make sure that's set to auto. Now if you go to the focus tab in the menu and go to AF/MF and go to focus mode and set it to single shot AF or AF-S. Now if you go back out to the focus menu and scroll down to focus area and set the focus area to wide. Okay, so that should take care of all our camera settings. Now we're ready to shoot. All right, so now we're gonna go around my own house and shoot a few rooms, and I'm gonna go over all the typical scenarios that come up in a real estate shoot. That way, after watching this, you'll know exactly what to do in all the different types of rooms and situations that you come across in a real estate shoot. We're gonna start here in my son's bedroom. A bedroom is really the most simple and straightforward room to shoot, so that's where we're gonna begin. So before we start shooting though, I just wanna go over a couple of important things. Number one is having the house prepared. And what I mean by that is having the agent tell the homeowner, hey, we need to clean this place up as much as possible, declutter, take things like toothbrushes off the sink in the bathroom, decluttering countertops in the kitchen, taking away as many items as possible, putting them away in closets or in cabinets or wherever we can hide stuff. And this is obvious to most people. Most people do this on their own. And yes, when you come into a house, you may have to move a couple things. I always say, hey, you know, I might move something, I'll put it back. And most people are cool with that. Just let them know that you're gonna be touching their stuff. So you wanna have the house clean and decluttered as possible. I actually have a prepare sheet that I share with my clients that they can share with the homeowners as well. That contains suggestions on how to do this and what items to take away and stuff. So that's a good idea to keep in mind. So maybe you want to create that for yourself to share with your own clients. It just helps, you know, expedite this process and have things ready for when you get there, because you really want to show up and just be able to shoot everything and leave. You don't want to be like, you know, moving furniture, shuffling things around. You know, sometimes that happens when you're in a small house and they have no place to hide stuff. They say, hey, you know, I'm really sorry, but, you know, we may have to move things from room to room while we shoot because I just have nowhere to put it. And, you know, that's fine. You just deal with the situation. But ideally, you want the place in its best shape as possible when you walk through the door. The other thing I want to mention before we start shooting is camera height. Generally speaking, I have my camera about waist high on my tripod. I'm 6 foot tall, but really what you're looking for is you want to have a good balance of floor and ceiling in your shot. If your camera's up here, eye level the whole time, you're gonna see like so much ceiling in your shot. And conversely, if your camera's super low, you're gonna just see all floor. The floor is gonna be coming up at you and it's gonna be dominating the scene. So you want a good balance of floor and ceiling in your shot. So that's what we're looking for. Of course, in certain scenarios, this will not work, such as if you have a piece of furniture near your camera, you may have to raise it up a little bit so you can shoot over that. Or in a kitchen or bathroom, for instance, you want the camera to be up higher because in the kitchen, you don't want to see the underneath of the cabinets, which is unattractive. And you also don't want to be like below countertop height because you want to be able to see the countertops and everything. So there's certain scenarios that you want your camera to be higher, and we're going to touch base on those in this demonstration. All right, so let's set up our first shot here. As you can see again, my camera's about waist high here, but looking at the screen, I could probably raise it up a little bit more. The floor is a little bit more dominant than the ceiling, so think about right there is a good height. So I'm just raising it up just a tad bit more to balance the ceiling and the floor. So once that's set, you can notice too that I am pretty much standing outside of the room. And the reason for that is we always want to get the widest shot possible. You can get tighter, more composed shots in certain rooms. Of course, a bedroom, we wouldn't really need to do that, but in maybe, you know, a main room, like a living room or something like that, or a kitchen, we might want to get tighter shots, you know, detail shots, things like that. But in a bedroom, typically I get one wide shot and maybe one secondary shot coming the other direction if it warrants it, such as if there's like an attached bathroom or some other feature you want to show going the other direction. But a lot of times for a bedroom, one shot will suffice. That's why it's sort of the simplest and easiest rooms to shoot are bedrooms. Always get a wide shot of every room. That's very important to remember. Agents will always want a wide shot. If you don't get it, they're gonna be calling you, asking you for a wide shot. So definitely always get that shot. Whether you get other tighter shots, again, is discretionary, like I mentioned, but always definitely get that wide shot. It's very important to remember. All right, so now that I have my camera sort of in position here, I'm basically positioned outside of the room so I can get the widest shot possible. Now I want to compose my shot. So I'm just going to move my camera around here. Typically in these scenarios, I like to kind of shoot towards the back wall, but this room is sort of long this way. And there's this dresser here, which will be right in my face if I'm shooting in that direction, and the bed's over there. So really I'm going to kind of want to turn my camera more this way for this particular room to get the length and show the size of the room. So I'm going to turn my camera more this way. And typically what I look for when composing my shots is things to kind of frame my shot. So I like to look for things on the edge of each side of the frame to kind of line my shot up with. Like there's these shelves over here. So I'm going to use that to line my camera up on the right edge. And then there's sort of these closet doors. I'm going to use that as sort of the other side border edge. So, you know, I'm using those two elements to kind of just frame my shot in. Typically I like to use a door frame or window frame to frame my shots on the edge. I definitely try to avoid cutting things off with the edge of my frame. That's something you want to watch out for. It's not ideal and just doesn't make for a good composition typically. And you'll see that as we go through this demonstration. I'll be talking about that. But I try to avoid it. Sometimes it's unavoidable and you just have to do the best you can do with the scenario that you're in. All right, so now that I got my shot framed up compositionally speaking, the next thing I want to do is level my camera. I have my in-camera level on. One thing I want to say about the in-camera level is that it's not super accurate, so don't rely on it completely because there is a margin of error there. So, you know, it's not super accurate, at least with the Sony cameras. I don't know about other camera brands. You got to use your eyes. So how we're going to level, of course, is using the leveling base here that I talked about earlier in the gear section. And we want to level our tripod head first with the bubble level on the tripod head. You want to make sure that's level first, and then we'll level the tilt axis of the camera, which is this way. So first and foremost, I'm going to look at my camera level bubble here on the tripod head and get it right smack in the middle by twisting these knobs. And of course, if you had a geared head, you would just be doing the same thing using the levers on the gear head to get the head and, you know, the bubble level. So, all right, so now the head is level. So the next thing I want to do is level the tilt axis. And again, here's where, you know, the camera level comes in, but you know, it'll get you in the ballpark. But I'm going to look at, I always look at things on the edge of the frame, or I move my camera over. You know, you could pan over to like a door frame edge, because theoretically that's level. So you want to use something in the room to gauge your vertical level on, because you want your vertical lines to be straight. That's a big rule in real estate photography and something you always want to look for. So I got this closet door on my left here. So I can just tilt until I see on my, you know, left edge here on the closet door is like completely, perfectly vertical against the edge of my left frame of my camera, of my shot here. So I could see now that that's perfectly vertically straight. Of course, you can tweak things in post too to make, you know, your vertical level more level if it's slightly out of whack, but you want to be as close as possible. You can get it dead center and perfect in camera, so that's what I always try to do. All right, so now that I have my levels all level and everything looks good, my shot's composed, I'm ready to take the shot. So I'm just gonna grab my remote here and I'll press it to focus and let it go. All right, so that's our first shot taken. Those are the 5 brackets, shot automatically with all the settings we talked about. Using the remote, I didn't touch the camera because again, you might jiggle the camera. You can use the shutter button because we have the timer set, like before we set the timer to 2 seconds. So, you know, theoretically, if I press it, you know, it will work because the timer's there and you're letting go of the camera, so the camera has time to settle before it shoots. But ideally, you know, it's always just a good idea to use the remote. All right, guys, now moving over to the bathroom. Let's do a bathroom shot here. This is a pretty typical bathroom setup that you see in a lot of houses. So this is pretty representative of a lot of situations you come across as far as bathrooms go. One thing I didn't mention in the other room was that one of the first things I do when I come into a room is deal with the window situation. So as far as blinds go and all that, here you can see I have the blinds all the way up, which looks fine in this situation. Sometimes when you put all the blinds up, they look so bunched up and ugly at the top. So in that situation, I'll just have them down all the way and just open them so they're just slatted perfectly flat so you can see out the window still. You want the light coming in, you want to be able to see out the window. You don't want the blinds to be, you know, closed. It's just not a good look. So anyway, one of the first things I do when I walk into a room is deal with the window treatment situation. So that's just one thing I wanted to point out. All right, so other than that, you can see here, I took everything off the sink top. There's no toothbrushes or soap dispensers or anything like that. Just cleaned it off. You know, some items in certain situations are fine. You don't want to just strip it bare. Like, you know, in my son's room that we just did, you know, there were some things on the shelves and things like that. You want some life to be in the photos, but you want to minimize it as much as possible, make it look as clean as possible, decluttered as possible, and big as possible. So those are the reasons why we do it. Like on the kitchen counters, you know, a couple things are okay, like a knife set or whatever, but you know, you just don't want a bunch of clutter and junk on there. So you just want to minimize it as much as you can. Typically in a bathroom situation like this, I'll clear it off completely. All right, so now let's get to composing our shot. First things first, I am completely out of the bathroom. I'm outside the door. And I'm just gonna push, you know, my camera until it's just inside the door frame. So the front of my lens is just over the threshold of the door. So mainly my camera and tripod are completely out of the room. Bathrooms are the tightest rooms in the house, or the tightest rooms you're gonna have to shoot as far as real estate goes. So you wanna make these things look as big as possible, especially these bathrooms. They're always the tightest spaces. So uniquely in this situation, I'll get some of the door in the frame like this, and that's typical of a lot of bathroom shots I get. And really that's the only room that I'll do that with, unless it's like a super tight bedroom or something like that. But usually I don't get the door in the shot like this, but for a bathroom, I will. You just wanna make sure that it's like open, you know, as much as possible so you can see as much as possible. So I have my camera at waist height like I usually do. But again, what's wrong with this scene? What looks wrong here? It's too low, right? Because we're barely seeing the top of the sink here. It's almost level with the sink, and you know, we're not seeing any of the top. It's just way too low. We're seeing way too much of this vanity front and everything. So we want to raise up here, you know, somewhere about there is looking pretty nice. So you can see the difference now there. Now we're seeing, you know, nice amount of the top of the counter here, and you know, it's not so much in your face, the vanity and everything. So that's about the right height. You know, that's a little bit around my navel. So now we want to compose our shots. Again, I like to use elements on either side of the frame to kind of like, you know, frame it nicely and compose the shot nicely, give it balance and sort of make it look aesthetically pleasing. So we have this mirror here. So I'm gonna use the edge of this mirror on this side of the frame. And of course this side, I'm just gonna be using this door. So I'm just gonna kind of turn the camera until, you know, I'm not getting any of this in the picture. Like, you know, you don't want this in the shot. So, you know, make sure, you know, that's cropped out. So right about there, I'm just gonna lock that off. And obviously, you know, you can see our vertical lines are not straight. This is totally skewed out this way, you know, so we have to level our tripod head first. Again, using my leveler, I'm just turning the knobs, leveling it out. So now my bubble level is dead on and perfect. Now we want to do, you know, our vertical level. So again, I'm using my eyes here. I'm just looking at, you know, the edge of this and the edge of this. And I just want to make sure that they look perfectly straight. So somewhere right around there. I actually think I want to come up even a tad bit higher, right about there. All right, perfect. That's right, I think, where I want to be. So for this shot, that's a perfect little bathroom shot. I'm going to use my remote now and fire off the brackets. So a lot of times for a bathroom like this, I'll just get the one shot that we just did. But if the shower has like nice tile in it and stuff, I might get another shot, say from over by the toilet facing this way, just to show some of the shower and the nice tile work, or if there's a nice glass shower door here. If the shower is something really nice to show off, then, you know, that's worth another second shot coming the other way for like a nice detail shot. But this shower is not nice. It's just an insert, like, you know, definitely nothing to look at. So I'm not gonna get that shot for this. I just wanted to mention that. It's something to keep in mind. Of course, if this was like a master bathroom too, I'd be getting, you know, 2 or 3 shots. If there's, you know, a nice freestanding tub and, you know, a nice walk-in shower and all this other great stuff, you know, in a lot of houses, that's the situation. So you definitely want to capture, you know, those features. All right, so that's it for the bathroom. That's a typical bathroom and bedroom shot that we just did. So now let's move on to more of the main rooms of the house, such as kitchen and living room. All right, now let's take a look at the living room. Again, I'm completely outside of the room. The camera is completely on the other side of the wall. Like, this is the wall here, the entrance to the living room from the dining room. Here's the other edge of the wall. Here's my dog who doesn't want to listen to me and stay out of the room. So anyway, yes, I'm just trying to get the widest shot possible here. So I could go something like this. Again, I don't want to cut things off on the edge of my frame, so I'm either going to get this picture in here completely or cut it out completely. The problem with this direction that I have here is, like, you can notice too, like, something to watch out for. Anything on the edge of your frame with a wide angle lens like this, it's going to look very stretched. So you can see the TV is, you know, getting pretty distorted here and getting pretty stretched. So I'm actually going to kind of try to go more this direction and cut that picture out over here on this side. And yes, I think I like that better. So this, it's still a little distorted. You know, it's gonna happen with things near the edge of their frame, so it's just something you have to deal with, but trying to minimize it as much as possible. Just moving the camera a little bit, I think minimize it a little bit, but you know, it is what it is. So now I wanna just level my shot. So again, first I'm gonna level my tripod head by using my leveler. twisting the knobs. So now I have the bubble level on my tripod head, perfectly centered, and that's completely level. Now I want to level my tilt axis. And again, here's where you can, you can just pan to the right a little bit. So you're seeing, this edge of the wall here, and always use some sort of visual element to use to gauge your level. So, now you can see the edge of your frame is perfectly straight, against this edge of the wall, more or less. Maybe slightly off, there we go. Like something like that, it's perfectly level. You can use things like that to gauge your level. Now I'll just, pan back, and there we have our composition. The other thing I didn't mention before is, I always have all the lights on pretty much. So, turn the lights on in the room, unless it's like a super sunlit room with huge windows, like floor to ceiling windows or something like that. There's tons of natural light. You don't even need lights. Then I might consider not even turning them on because they create color casts and things. So, but in this situation, I have all the overhead lights on. I actually left the lamps off because they were just casting a lot of orange color cast. So, not something I really want in my shot, so I just left them off. So also for living rooms or dining rooms or any main rooms, living spaces like that, I will get a minimum of 2 shots, and they're usually opposing corners. So since I'm getting this shot here from this corner going this way, the other shot I would get would be over by that chair in that corner over here facing this way where I am at right now. The reason I always get 2 opposite corners, unless it's impossible to do, say there's a couch in the corner and you can't do it, but typically I'll get the 2 opposing corners. And the reason for that is that covers every vantage point of the room. So, from this view, we're getting this wall, we can see all this where the window is and this wall here. And from this view, we're gonna see into the dining room where I'm standing, and also the entirety of this wall. So you're getting the whole view of the whole room between those 2 shots. So that's the idea and the thinking behind that. Again, a minimum of 2 shots here. If there's a fireplace or something, I would get like a close-up detail shot of the fireplace. That's a instance where I'd get a tight detail composed shot there. So just, those are all the things to think about when shooting rooms, especially these main living spaces. All right, so yeah, I'm pretty happy with this now. I think this is a good looking shot. You might notice some like dots on my baseboards and stuff. There's trim work being done in my house. So, in case you're wondering why it's like that, we're in the middle of some projects here. So anyway, it's also a gloomy, rainy day outside, unfortunately, but it is what it is. All right, so also here is where the circular polarizer can come into effect. Again, that's a piece of gear that I use all the time, as I mentioned in the gear section. And you can see there's glare all along the hardwood floor here, into the foyer where there's tile over there. So if I adjust my polarizer, you can see right about there, I've greatly reduced or almost eliminated most of that glare, except for that one highlight coming out of the window there. So, again, that's what that does. I think it makes a pretty good impact on the image. Now we can really see the deep wood tones of the floor there. So, all right, our shot is level and composed. Everything looks good, so I'm gonna take this shot now. So one other scenario I just wanted to cover too is, 99% of the time we want our shots to be perfectly level with our verticals straight and everything like that. But there are certain scenarios where we will do unlevel shots, where I will do unlevel shots. I just wanted to point those out, and this is one of those scenarios. So I would always get a typical sort of shot of the entryway like this. I'm not gonna do it, I'm just showing you I would get an entryway shot or whatever. But the other shot I would get, if you have a 2-story foyer like this, I will tilt the camera up like this and get a shot going up. Obviously we're not level, we're tilted, but this is one of those scenarios where I would tilt my camera and get an unlevel shot. I just wanted to point that out because that is important to remember. If the situation presents itself, like you have to show a nice high ceiling, really showcase something like that in a house, it's okay to tilt your camera. Not every shot has to be level. Like I said, 99% of the time we're doing level shots, but there are these situations where we'll shoot, tilted up or down or something like that. Also, another typical shot is from up on the landing of the stairs, pointing down towards the front door, showing the shot coming down. Again, that's another great shot that I get a lot of the time. So those are 2 situations where I would tilt the camera. I just want to point these situations out to you because they do come up, so it's important to keep that in mind. All right, so for our last shot, we're gonna do the kitchen here. the kitchen is the room that always gets the most shots. I always get it at minimum 4 shots of the kitchen, 1 from each corner. So say from this corner that we're in, from this corner over here facing this way, from this corner where the doorway is to the dining room. By the way, the dining room table is full of my son's Legos, so just don't pay attention to that. So I would get a shot coming in this way, and also from this corner over here where this cabinet is facing directly where we're at. So those would be the 4 minimum angles. You know, if there's an island like this, I might get another angle facing in here towards the sink, just as a tighter shot showing that countertop area. Also, if there's an eating area, like over here to the left, there's like a table and stuff, I would get a 5th shot from, you know, further back this way, showing the table and the entire kitchen together. So that would be a 5th shot. So those scenarios arise, but I just wanted to mention, you know, 4 minimum shots I get of the kitchen almost always. You want to show every single angle. Kitchen is like the most important room of the entire house, so people want to see a lot of views of the kitchen. All right, so compositionally, I just put the tripod down. I want to kind of frame this up here. So I'm going to use the edge of this, you know, cabinetry here as the edge of this frame. Unfortunately, this is like a scenario where I don't have anything ideal to frame up my shot on the left side here. I can go, you know, close to these cabinets, but then they're going to be looking stretched and distorted, so I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to have to kind of do something like this where we're getting a portion of the sliding glass door in here. It's okay, it doesn't look that bad, but again, that's not ideal. I like to have something a little bit neater, you know, to compose my shot with, you know, to frame my shot with, but we just don't have that here. And like I said, there's going to be scenarios like this where we don't have something like great to frame our shot up with on one of the sides. So it is what it is, this happens. So I'm kind of glad it's happening in this demonstration so you can see, you know, I just have to figure out a way to deal with it, and I think that's the best way. So as I said though, kitchens are one of these times where we want to raise the camera up. It's right now at waist height, and you can see, we're kind of seeing the underneath of the cabinet. It's not too bad here, but we can't really see the countertops at all. So we want to raise our camera up. I'm gonna go pretty high on it, and somewhere about there. I want to keep this leg in the picture, and we can't see underneath the cabinets anymore, but we can see the countertop and everything. So it's much better than it was. Just gonna back up a little bit, somewhere around there. So I think height-wise, that's pretty good. So now we can see the top of this island, top of the countertops, everything. You notice too, you know, this is what I mean, like a few items are okay on the counter, like there's like a knife set, a cutting board, like some spoons, and like the spice rack, some bananas and a cookbooks, you know, like gives it some life, you know, but I stripped everything else out of here, like sponges and soaps, and you know, trust me, there was a bunch of clutter on this counter like 10 minutes ago before I cleared it all off for this picture. So, you know, you want to streamline things, but you know, a few items are okay. Looks like, you know, someone's living there, and you know, it's sort of inviting. So you want to have some things there, maybe not stripping it completely, so it seems like a vacant house, like that's cold and empty. So, you know, a few items are good. All right, so compositionally, this is cool. I'm just gonna level my tripod head, which is actually pretty much close to being level. So that's level, my tripod head's level. I just want to now deal with my verticals. Like if I zoom in here, you can see it's just a little bit off here. It's tilted down a little bit too much. So if I, you know, kind of tilt up here, just looking at this cabinetry here, which, you know, presumably is level. So, you know, you can zoom into, and I zoom in a lot sometimes just to check, and that's pretty much bang on to that. So, you know, we're pretty much looking good. So level is good, composition's good. I'm happy with this. And I'm just going to, you know, press the shutter on my remote and take this shot. All right, so those are pretty much all the typical scenarios and all the typical room types that come up in a house. So again, just to recap, bedrooms, one good wide shot from the doorway if you can. If you have to go into the room, so be it, but just get the widest shot possible, at least one, if not two, if you want to show off another feature that's in the room, maybe a closet, or, you know, there's a bathroom attached, but minimum one shot for bedrooms, a wide shot, minimum wide shot for every single room, minimum one wide shot for every single room, widest shot you can get. Then again, you know, bathroom, you know, at least one wide shot from the door, making it look as big as possible. Those are the tightest rooms in the house, so you want to make them look as big as you can. Of course, get more shots if needed, if there's nice tile or anything like that to show off. Main living spaces in the house, such as living rooms, dining rooms, a minimum 2 shots, preferably opposing angles, like I said, you know, from corners that are across from each other. So from this corner, say, and then that corner right across from me, so you're covering the whole entire room. You always want to get those opposing angles if possible. Then of course the kitchen, we want to get 4 shots, like I said, from each corner of the room at minimum. And then any other additional shots if there's an eat-in area and there's like a sink area behind the island, if you want to get in there and get a shot. So at minimum 4 shots from each corner, and then any additional shots you feel are necessary. And then finally, like in the 2-story foyer, there are situations where we do tilt our camera and get shots that aren't typically level, verticals are off. All right, so that covers interior shooting. Now I'm gonna take you outside for the exterior shooting. I did a video on exterior shooting already, so I'm gonna insert that video basically a little bit edited into this video right now, because I covered all the bases for that in detail in that video, so there's no reason for me to really reshoot that, but I'll include it in this video because this is a full course and I want it to be completely encompassing of every single aspect. So I'm not just gonna link to that video, I'm actually gonna insert that video now into this video so you can watch how I typically shoot exterior photos. It'll take you step by step through that process now. And then after that, I'll meet you back on the computer and take you through some of my editing processes for these photos. So typically on the front of the house, I'll get 4 shots usually of the front exterior. I'll get 1 off to the left here. I'll get 1 sort of dead center, 1 off to the right, and then on one of the off to the side shots, either to the left or the right, I'll get a pulled back wide shot that really captures the full front yard. This house doesn't really have a huge front yard, so not a lot to capture, but you'll see in a second how I do that. I have my tripod fully extended here, as you can see, all the legs fully extended, so it's kind of like basically eye level my camera. You want some good height on your exteriors. Usually houses are high, there's no roof outside, so there's nothing above to really impede you from, you know, raising your camera up high. That wouldn't make anything look weird. So I am shooting 5 brackets here. That's the edited image there, the final image. So that's my off to the left shot. But I am shooting brackets here. 5 brackets is, you know, overkill pretty much for exteriors. Definitely not necessary. But that's what I shoot for interiors if I'm shooting HDR. So I just leave it on that setting instead of switching settings. So this is my sort of pulled back shot I'm setting up here to capture the whole entire front yard. Again, on this house, it's not so important, and you can definitely get away with not doing this shot because there's not much of a big front yard here. This is like a retirement community, like 55 and over. So, you know, a lot of houses close together sort of, and you know, not big yards, but it is important. Most agents will want to see the full property, so that's the point of that shot. So now I'm moving to do my dead center shot, you know, straight onto the house. We got this mailbox here in the way. I'm sort of trying to figure out where I'm gonna be on which side of the mailbox. So that kind of makes it a little difficult. So I definitely, you know, want to crop the mailbox out, so I'm just trying to get around it. So here I'm just zooming in and looking at the roof line, the horizontal roof line. I kind of want to make sure that my horizontal lines are straight across here so that my shot looks really straight on. Of course, I'm leveling my verticals too on all these shots, making sure they're level, so my vertical lines are straight up and down. So here I'm getting my off to the right image here. And another thing is, this is sort of a low house. It's only like 1 level, but see here, you could always shoot wide and crop in, like you'll see here. That's the crop. So later on, you can crop in tighter. So especially on 2-story houses that are high up in the air, you're gonna have to shoot further back, and you'll have a lot of like foreground or the front yard or whatever will be in there, and you're gonna want to crop in after the fact after you do your editing, like I just showed you. Here I'm just lowering my tripod legs because I'm going to get a shot of the front entryway. I always get a shot of the front entryway. So I'm just lowering my tripod legs, my bottom legs all the way in. So as you can see here, so I just lowered the lower legs up. So now it's sort of like chest height, more or less. Now here, again, I wanna make sure my horizontal is level. I'm looking at the top of the door frame there, just making sure my horizontal line is basically straight across. And now I'm gonna check, of course, my vertical level as well. So these are important things. When you're shooting something straight on, you always wanna make sure that horizontal line is completely straight across there. That's why I zoom in like that, just to check. And obviously on the left side of the frame here, I can tell that my vertical level is off, so I'm just adjusting my vertical level here, as you can see by that line on the left-hand side. So just making sure my camera's level, both, you know, horizontally, I guess you could say, and vertically. So that's that shot set. I'm gonna fire that off. That's the edited shot. So that would be sort of my typical shots for the front of the house, those 4 front exteriors and then an entryway shot. Now in the back, now we're heading around the back of the house here, and it has a little back patio again. So I would shoot this again, you know, either waist high or, you know, or a little higher. But again, I would lower my tripod for a little patio like this or a deck, either one of those things. Most houses have one of those 2 things, so I'll lower down and get a shot that just features that. Now it's the end of the winter here in New Jersey, so obviously their furniture is wrapped up. The outside is, you know, not looking too great. You know, the grass is a little yellow and all that. It's, you know, it's almost spring, so, but you know, the exteriors right now, this time of the year here, don't look the best, but it is what it is. You'll notice I'm doing, you know, sky replacements on all these. I do have a sky replacement pack, if you didn't know. The link is down in the description below, so check that out. So that's the edited image for this patio shot. So definitely capture patios, decks. I always do that, make sure I do that. So typically for the back, other than a patio or a deck, now I'm raising my tripod legs again to full height. So I'll typically get a shot. This is the back right corner of the house facing out towards the back to show what the backyard looks like. Usually most houses have like a fenced in backyard or whatever, so that's what I'd be shooting back towards the fence. Now you can see my tripod is fully extended. So I'll get one off on the right-hand corner of the house looking back towards the back, and then again on the left-hand side as well. So both corners I'll get shooting, you know, so you get each opposing angle. You know, I'll do this for every single house. These are all typical shots that I get for almost every single house. So that's, you know, facing off to the back from the right corner. Now I'm actually going to turn the tripod around and shoot towards the back of the house. So that's the other shot I'll get, is always towards the back of the house. This is sort of downhill a little bit, so the house is kind of up high here, but again, you can crop this after you edit it, like you'll see in a second. So that's the edited image, and here comes the crop here. So that's the crop. So you can always can crop in on these exteriors. Cropping is like a big part of, you know, how I edit the exteriors. And I'll send both versions to the agent most likely. Sometimes I'll just send a crop if I feel like the other version is unnecessary, but. So here I'm just going off to the back left corner of the house, again, facing away, getting that opposite angle. That's the edited image. So that really wraps up my typical shots for an exterior real estate photography shoot. Alright guys, so I imported all the shots that we did in the demo here into Lightroom. And then I also imported this one exterior image from a shoot that I did last week. It's not one from that exterior video example, it's just a different one, but I just wanted to show you how to edit an exterior photo. So that's why I imported this in here. It's the same process for any exterior photo that I shoot. So with all these photos selected here that I imported, if you go to library and then you go to new collection, typically what I do is select all of them and then I name the collection the name of the address, so 123 Main Street we'll call it. That's already used. I'll just call it Main Street, I'll spell it out and I'll hit create. So now we have, you know, this collection 123 Main Street with all our photos in it. So I'm not going to take you through editing all of these photos, we're just going to do a couple of them and that should suffice. I do offer editing training practice packs, which you can find a link to down in the description of this video. In those practice packs, I take you through a whole entire shoot, edit image by image, And there's a video accompanying it showing you how I edit each image, and you'll be able to download those images and do it side by side with me along with my video. So it really shows you a guided process through editing a whole entire shoot. So if you're looking for a more detailed training in editing, I definitely recommend getting one of those practice packs. It should be really helpful in helping you get the editing technique down pat. So there's two ways to go about editing HDR photos in my opinion. One is my recommended way, which is hand blending the images together. And then there's an auto merge way, which is quicker and faster and easier, but the result isn't as good, and I don't recommend it as much as just hand blending it. So I'm gonna show you my preferred method first, and then I'll show you quickly the auto merge method as well. So first, let's just maybe grab this living room shot, and I'm gonna select all these images. So these are our 5 brackets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 5 different exposures. And what I'm gonna do here with all these selected, I want to control click or right click on these, and then you'll see edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. By the way, I'm using Lightroom Classic, not the cloud version. I highly recommend using Lightroom Classic. So what this will do now is open these as layers here. You can see them opening in Photoshop. They're gonna be stacked on top of each other in layers. So we have all these exposures stacked on top of each other. So what we wanna do here is blend these exposures together to get a nice looking exposure here overall. So as you can see, it's very dark around the floor here in this cabinet and a lot of other places like the ceiling. So we just wanna, brighten up where it needs to be brightened up, and even if something's overexposed, we want to bring it down, but we don't really have much overexposure here. So the first thing we're going to do is I usually start with this middle bracket, and I'll bring that up to the top. As you can see, this is significantly brighter. So what we want to do here is create a black layer mask. So down here, you'll see the layer mask button. If you click it, it will just create a white layer mask. But if you hold the Option or Alt key down while you click on it, it'll create a black layer mask, which will hide that layer. So we want to now paint on this black layer mask with white as our foreground color. So we want to make sure we have white as our foreground color, and that will reveal what's underneath, AKA the brighter layer here. So I want to get my brush tool here, which is here. You can hit B to also access that. And I want to put the hardness all the way down to 0, as you can see here. Then our opacity, we want that at 100%. And our flow, we want a really low flow here, like 5%, that's perfect. So with our bracket keys, we can change the size of our brush, as you can see. We want a pretty large brush here, something like that. And I'm just gonna start brushing over this and brightening up specifically the darkest areas. I mean, overall, this whole thing needs a little brightening up in most places. So I'm just gonna kind of try to brush and then brush heavier in darker areas that need more revealing. So like that, this corner needs to be brightened up, this area in the ceiling. So editing in my mind is really 4 different steps, I would say. One is exposure blending, which we're doing now. Then it's dealing with windows, and then it's dealing with color corrections, and then it's just final touches. So those are the 4 steps in my mind of, editing photos. So that looks pretty good. We got a pretty good exposure here now. A lot of times we don't even need all the brackets. Sometimes it's only 2 or 3 that we need to use. So that's another thing to keep in mind. You don't always need all the brackets, but sometimes they come in handy. We could use some of these darker ones for window views if we need. This window view isn't even that bad, but if you want to see clearly out of the windows, that's up to you. Some people think it looks fake. However you want to go about it, it's up to you. So as far as exposure goes, I think that blend is pretty good. We've got a nice even exposure now everywhere. You can see the dark areas that we need to see, brightened up the areas that we need to brighten up. So now what I want to do is I'm just going to merge these 2 layers. So with this selected, if I hold shift and select both these layers, you can go to here and go to merge layers, which is Command or Control E. Now this is 1 layer, so it's just easier to work with. Like if you wanted to brighten up some more of areas, you could use this super bright image. Again, just create a black layer mask, Option click or Alt click, and then you could theoretically, if you wanted to brighten some of this area up, you could. So you have that available to you if you need it. It couldn't hurt to brighten some of this up. So so again, those layers are all there if you need them. So I want to deal with the window now. Again, this window is not that bad. It doesn't necessarily need to be masked in, but I just want to show you that process. So if I bring this next dark layer up, this is obviously even too dark, but for the sake of this demonstration, I just want to show you how this would be done. So I would just, again, create a black layer mask by holding Option or Alt and click on the layer mask button. Now if you use the lasso tool, this polygonal lasso tool, I want to mask these out so you can see out of the windows better. So if I just click around here, this can be, a pretty tedious thing to do too. So you have a lot of windows. So this is time consuming, but again, you can do this. This would be the same for the auto merging or hand blending. If you want to do the windows, you're gonna have to do this. So, that's one of the downfalls of HDR is to get these things done, you have to do it a little bit in a tedious manner. So now I have this selection of the window. I want to switch white to background color now, just switch those. And with this mask selected, now if I hit Command X or Control X to cut, or if you go to Edit, Cut, it'll cut that out. And now we can see, obviously this is too dark. We'll deal with that in a second. But right now I just want to mask out these windows, and we'll deal with these crossbars too in a second. That's where the mask comes in handy, because you can just bring those areas back in easily. So I'm simply just going to do the same thing for these other two windows. I'm just going to go Command X and cut. Again, just Command X and cut. All right, so now with this selected again, I want to get my brush tool back here again. Just hit B, or you can select it here, brush tool. And I want to up my hardness here to maybe 80 or so. And I want to bring my flow back up to 100%. And I'm just going to zoom in here. And with my brush, I'm going to make it really small now. So just bracket keys, bracket up or down will change your brush size. I want it to be roughly the size of this crossbar here, so something around there. And again, with black as my foreground color, I can click here. And then if I go up to the top and just hold the Shift button and click up here, it brings that crossbar right back in. So again, here, I'll just do it here, click once here, and hold Shift and click once here, and that brings that crossbar right back in. Got this middle one here as well. Click, hold Shift. Shift just makes it go in a straight line. And a little bit on this edge here, I could fix. So what we're doing is just painting the mask back in so we can reveal whatever we want. Like if we painted over this, it's just gonna bring in that brighter layer again. So just undo that. So same thing for these other ones here really quick. Again, this last one here. Right now, if I zoom back out here, now you can see that we have these crossbars back in, which looks a lot better. But again, it's really dark out there, so it's a little too dark. So what we can do here is if we select the actual image here, the layer here, and we go to Filter, and we go to Camera Raw Filter, which is Shift Command A, it'll load this image up here. And these are basic Lightroom controls, basically. It's like loading Lightroom inside Photoshop. And we have these basic exposure controls. I'm just gonna up the exposure. Again, we're just paying attention to, the outside view here, because the rest of this image, it doesn't matter, because we only masked in this view. So that's all we need to be concerned with. So I'm just gonna get the exposure to where I want it to be for the outside, and you could change so you need to warm it up a little bit. You could even add some vibrance to it a little bit, saturation, just to make it look a little bit more lively because it's so dreary out there. And if we go on and off, that's kind of the changes that we made here. I'll just hit OK. And boom, it just brightened that all up and made it look better. So, if you want these clear window views, that's how you'd achieve it, is just by masking those in. So we're now finally done with our layers here. So we can just select all of them and then merge them by doing Command or Control E with them all selected. So now we're merged down to one layer. One other thing we can deal with real quick here before we do some color correcting and everything is the TV reflection here. Obviously you can see the reflection here. I usually like to do something with that. So I'm just gonna create a new layer here really quick. And again, I'm gonna get my polygonal lasso tool here, and I'm just going to zoom in here and select the TV screen. Now with the TV screen selected, if I go right click or control click on that, I can go to fill, and I wanna just select black and hit OK. So now it filled it with black, but what I like to do is make this a gradient. So now I'm just gonna hit Command D to deselect this so it's not selected anymore. And now if I select this layer, that's our black here, fill layer. If I double click on that, it'll bring up the layer style dialog box here. And if I go down to gradient overlay and check that off, you can see it filled it in with the gradient here. This is basically what I like to use. That's why it's already defaulted there. It's like a gray to black gradient. And if you click on this, you can control the colors here. Like maybe that's a little too light gray. I want to bring that down a little bit. So if we look here, yeah, that's better. It's a little too drastic. So if I want to bring this down low, so it's just a slight gradient. I hit OK, and you can, change your colors there. So if I hit OK there, that's good. And then the angle. So the angle is basically good because we have the window here, so the light source is sort of coming in from this side. So we want the lighter end of the gradient to be on this side. Just want to make it straighter, like more like that. So that looks good, and I want to hit OK. So I like that gradient. And the other thing you can do here is with the layer selected, if you go to opacity, 0, make it show through completely. But if you bring it down a little bit, you want a little bit of the reflection to show through and blend that together a little bit, you can do that. I'm actually gonna leave it pretty high. Now I'm just gonna select these again and merge them together. Now if I just save this image, we'll see it come back over to Lightroom, and I'm just gonna go back to Lightroom. Alright, so you can see the image here popped up in our Lightroom collection, so I'm just gonna double click on that, and then I'm gonna go to develop. And the next thing we need to deal with is the color correction. You can see like the ceiling looks orange instead of white. And there's just a lot of orange light casted by these, overhead lights here. So I just want to deal with the color casting going on. And the quickest way to do that is if you go up to masks here, click on that. We're going to come down here to range, which is like color range here. We want to select color range. And I'm going to select here on the ceiling, this color here. And now you can see it selected this orangish color here and brings up this little box here where you can do some controls. And the overlay is just showing where it's affecting. It's affecting almost everywhere because the cast is almost everywhere. So we can now, minimize that a little bit. So if we go to saturation, we bring the saturation down, you can see it's starting to clean up. Mainly that the whites are getting whiter. Cool down the temperature since that was warm. If you bring down the temperature a little cooler, that'll help offset that as well. So really this is the quickest way to do this. So now if I turn this mask off, you can see it went from that to this. So we cleaned it up quite a bit. Now it doesn't look as orangey and dingy as it did. So that's the fastest way to do that. In Photoshop, you can really make selections and do things a lot, more precisely if you want to. It takes a lot more time. But this is like the quickest way of doing it. You just got to be careful. If it gets areas that you don't want it to affect, like the wood, maybe you don't want to desaturate that too much. So that's what I mean about being more precise about it in Photoshop. Like if I open this in Photoshop real quick with Lightroom adjustments, like with my lasso tool here, say I wanted to make the ceiling really nice and white, which I like to do a lot of the time. I'm just doing this quickly just to show you, but if you select the ceiling, and now if I go to adjustments and just do hue and saturation, I can desaturate to this like almost all the way, very low, and I could even increase the lightness so that it's very bright and white. So before and after, it just really whitened it up quite a bit. And also what you can do is if you wanted to, go even further here, you could duplicate this layer. So I'm just going to hit Command or Control J to duplicate that. And now if I go to adjustments again, hue and saturation, if I just desaturate this layer all the way, merge these two together. So now we have this desaturated layer. If I create a black layer mask here by option clicking, I could take the brush tool, if I bring that flow down again to 4 or 5%, soft brush, and I want white as my foreground color. It looks a little color casty over here. I can just brush slightly over some of this area. It's effectively like, desaturating it. So if you look here, just look here under this light here and what I just did, that's before and that's after. So it's just slightly desaturating and bringing down that orange color cast. Like I can do that a little bit on this couch, you know, a little bit in these areas, you know, to desaturate a little bit, just clean it up. The problem is with the orange lights, it makes things look orange, and then, you know, it makes them look like sort of dingy or dirty. So that's sort of what we're combating here by, you know, color correcting. So yeah, that looks, you know, that even cleaned it up a little bit more. So, you know, you can get more precise with Photoshop. I just wanted to show you that really quick. So again, if I just select these two, merge them and save this, go back to Lightroom, you can see that popped back up here. And this is the previous version. So before and after, you know, just cleaned it up even a little bit more. So I'm actually gonna take this out of our collection by just hitting delete. So the last stage here is just making some final touches in Lightroom, and that's just global adjustments. So I tend to maybe a little exposure. I could use slight exposure bump, a little shadow boost. You know, you could bring some of the highlights down a little bit. I always like to add clarity, usually around like 20 to 25. I usually somewhere in that range. Come up a little bit more on the exposure. Vibrance and saturation, I don't mess with too much. You might be able to get away with a little vibrance that just gives it a little bit of life to the colors. So, you know, before and after, it's just a little bit of a sweetening bump there. There's this little thing on the floor here. If I take this Band-Aid here, I can just quickly remove that. So that's a spot remover. So overall, that's pretty good. The last thing I'll do is just add some sharpening. So if I kind of use this little window, you can zoom in on some areas like this heating grate here. If I start bringing up the sharpening, you can see the detail really starting to come out in that. It's a good way to, you know, see where you're at. So I like to be in like the 50 to 70 range usually. So somewhere in that range. Just helps really bring out the details in the image. All right, so that's my final image. So I think this looks pretty good. Again, that's my preferred way of doing it, hand blending it. It takes a little bit longer than auto merging, but I think the end result is better. Really quick, I'm gonna show you auto merge. So if I say select this bathroom image, I'll just select these 5 brackets. And if you go into Lightroom here and you go to Photo Merge HDR, then I select merge, and it will create this HDR image that's automatically merged. And you can see it's made some adjustments already. So then you would just work off of those and just kind of adjust exposure as necessary, you know, shadows, highlights. Again, you could add your clarity to this. You gotta bring the color temp down globally. So you can just use the Lightroom adjustments mainly. If you want to mask the window in, obviously this is a little blown out here. So if you wanted to do that, you would have to, you know, bring this over into Photoshop along with whatever, you know, bracket you wanted to use for the window. You know, here's a darker one even. So you might need a combo of those two. You would have to bring those over to Photoshop to do that window masking thing I showed you. Same method as that for this. And again, you would have to, you know, to deal with this color cast situation. So you can do color range and just select, you know, this yellowy color on the white walls. And if I bring the saturation down, there's a lot of white in this bathroom, so that helps. Make those adjustments. I'm not gonna get too detailed into this. You just saw all this done. So, you know, already that's looking a lot better. Add sharpening, you know, so that's a faster way of doing it, but the end result isn't quite as good usually, and you have less control over the exposure blending. So it's not my recommended way to do it, but it's the fastest and easiest way. So maybe if you're, you know, new to editing, you can start with this, and when you get comfortable with this, and then maybe take it up a notch to the hand blending. Hand blending is really what I recommend doing. Okay, so now really quick, let's take a look at the exterior image I have in here. Again, I'm gonna select all 5 of these brackets. I'm gonna control click and go to edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. Exterior photos are a lot easier to edit than interior photos. We don't have to deal with color cast and all that. So it's just a much easier situation. Because we have one light source, which is the sun, so we don't have to deal with mixed lighting like we do inside. In this situation, obviously the front of the house is white and the sun's hitting it, so it's pretty overexposed. So I'm gonna bring up this darker second bracket here, and you can see that's a little bit better as far as the front of the house goes. And again, I'm just gonna quickly Option or Alt click on here to create a hidden black layer mask. With white as my foreground color, I got my brush tool, again, hardness all the way down, and again, my flow 4 or 5%. I'm just gonna brush over the front of this house and bring the exposure down on this a little bit, so you can see the detail there that we're lacking. So that's good blend as far as the front of the house goes, and that's all I really need out of that bracket. So if I select these two and merge them, now that we're done with that, and I could brighten up this foreground color a little bit. So if I take maybe this brighter bracket, bring that up, again, Option or Alt click on that to create a hidden layer mask. With my brush tool, I'll just kind of brighten up some of this foreground area where it's very shady. I'm gonna want to crop this too, probably anyway. So that's pretty good. I brought up some of that shade a little bit. So I'm done with that pretty much. Now I'm just gonna merge those two. You know what, I'm gonna bring this darker one up even, and I'll click here, Option click. I'm gonna bring the exposure down just a little bit more on the front here. I feel like it's still a little too hot. So you have all these brackets to work with. That's why we shoot brackets. So we have the option to be able to work with whatever we need here. And that's a little bit better there. So now I'm done with exposure blending. That's it for the exterior. I'm just gonna select all these and merge them. There's a car in the driveway because the people weren't there, so I couldn't have them move it. So there's a remove tool under this band-aid. If you go to remove tool, this thing is a magical in the new Photoshop. So you can just select this and it'll take it right out. Boom, done. So that's a really huge and awesome tool. The other thing I want to deal with is the sky. The sky is actually pretty nice in this image anyway, but I just want to show you sky replacement. So if you come up to edit and you go to sky replacement, I usually replace the sky even if it is decent because it just gives it a cleaner look, bringing in another sky, exposure-wise and everything. I actually have created in my own sky replacement pack, which I have available down in the description below. There's a link to it if you're interested in getting it. It's down there, and it has like 20 skies in there that I shot myself that you can use in your real estate photography, so it's helpful. All these really nice little skies here. So I'm gonna go with this one here. I'm gonna hit OK. So now I have the sky in here. So again, I can merge these down. Now if I save this, it'll go over to Lightroom again, and you can see it brought it back here to Lightroom. And again, I just want to put my final touches on this. So if I hit auto, usually I find that's a good starting point. It's sort of knocked up the exposure too much. I'm gonna bring that down a little bit. Vibrance up is good. I add some clarity to this. A lot of the same things we did earlier. And then also, I want to go down to detail, add some sharpening. You can just see in these like bricks and stuff, once this is starting to sharpen up nicely, you're like kind of where you need to be. So overall, it's looking pretty good. I mentioned cropping before. A lot of times I'll do two versions. I'll deliver two versions to the client. So this is uncropped, and I'm just gonna make a copy of this. So if I go, Control or right click on this and just go to create virtual copy. Now we have two copies of the same thing, and then on one of these, I'm just gonna crop in. So I bring that in tighter. And yeah, that looks pretty good. So that's basically how I would edit the exterior photos as well. The last thing I'll talk about is just exporting from here once you're done editing. So, say you had, however many you had edited here, you can select all the ones you have edited, and you go to File and Export. And then the export file thing comes up, and then you could choose your folder. I'll just create a new folder and call it edited. Or, typically I would name this the address. So 123 Main Street, we'll just call it. I'll hit choose, and then I like to rename them too usually. So 123 Main Street, I'll name them, and then custom name sequence. So then it'll be 123 Main Street -1, -2, so on and so forth. So here you can downsize them if you want to, but you can also just export them full resolution. In the photo delivery section that's coming up next, I explain how the program I use automatically resizes the images, so you don't have to worry. So you can just export them in full res, and then that will downsize them for you to web size. So, and then that way the client has access to the higher resolution files too if they want them. So I'm gonna leave this unchecked. Otherwise you can, limit the file size there if you want to. And that's really it. And then you can just hit export and then it'll export. One last thing I want to mention too about editing here is if I go back over to Photoshop, I have these HDR real estate photography actions for hand blending to assist you in hand blending. There's a lot of things here that'll speed up the workflow, like merging layers, adding black layer masks and all that. I'm not going to get into it in this video, but I do have another video on my channel about this and how this can speed up the workflow a little bit. And I do have these available. Again, down in the description below, I have a link to my Photoshop actions and some Lightroom presets too that help along with this process to help speed things up for you. So definitely check that out if you want to and if you're interested. One more thing I want to talk about in regards to editing is outsourcing your editing, or in other words, sending your photos out to be edited by an editor. This is something you hopefully will have to do down the line once you get too busy to do it yourself. You just will be doing too many shoots and you won't be able to edit all the shoots yourself in order to get them back in a timely manner. Once you're doing like 3, 4, 5 shoots a day, it's just gonna be impossible to keep up with. I do strongly recommend learning editing yourself. You really need to know how to edit yourself. And in the beginning, I edited all my stuff for the first couple years when I first started in real estate photography, and I highly recommend you do the same thing. I think you should definitely learn it until you just can't do it anymore. But that being said, I will say if you're struggling getting good results in the beginning and you're just starting out and you're just not good at it yet, you can also just send them out in the beginning too, just to have a professional do it, so the images you're sending to your clients are top notch. But as I said, even if you're sending them out in the beginning, you should be practicing editing those shoots yourself. So if you're sending them out, edit the whole shoot yourself. It's important and it's a great learning tool as well, because when you shoot and then you come back to the computer and edit and look at your images, you're gonna learn things about shooting and you're just gonna be perfecting your craft. It makes you a better shooter by learning your mistakes when you go to edit the images, and also you should just know your craft inside and out. There's also gonna be times when you're in a pinch and you need to edit an image and get it to your client ASAP because they need it back, or maybe the editor's made a mistake on something, you need to correct it. So you just need to know how to edit. It's part of this craft, it's part of this business, so it's a skill you need to learn. If you are looking for an editor to outsource to, I highly recommend Pixelmob. There's no better place to find a good editor. So Pixelmob is a marketplace of editors. You can see all the different editors here. They have ratings to help you choose the best ones. It's just a great resource to get an editor, and there's so many options here, so many good options and really good talented editors here. So if you're looking for an editor, Pixelmob is undoubtedly the spot to do it. All right, so that covers the photo editing process. Now let's talk about photo delivery. Okay, now that our photos are edited, let's talk about delivering them to clients. You could, of course, just send them a Dropbox link or a Google Drive link and they could download them from there. But there are some more real estate-centric media platforms out there that I think are really the way to go. Most importantly, I prefer using a service that requires the client to pay first before they're able to download their media. This is important because it saves you so much time and aggravation trying to keep tabs on who owes you money and trying to chase down payments from people. Once the client downloads the photos or whatever media you're providing them, their motivation to pay you goes way down, or they just forget all about it. Having them pay first takes this stress and aggravation out of the equation and leaves you free to concentrate on your business. It's invaluable in my opinion. There's a few good real estate media dedicated platforms out there to choose from. I've been actually personally doing a lot of research on this topic, researching all these different companies and what they offer, because I've been looking to move to a different platform recently, and I landed on SPIRO, which you can find at spiro.media. I chose SPIRO for a few reasons. Firstly, for the full set of features that they offer, and also for the design and aesthetics of their user interfaces and property websites and so on. Secondly, I really like their simple and straightforward pricing model, which is $5 per listing that you create and send to your client for payment and download. It's that simple. There's no monthly subscription like you have to pay with a lot of other sites. You could easily build this cost into the pricing of your services as well, so it costs you nothing. Whatever you decide on for the cost of your photography, just raise it by $5. What I mean by that is, say for a 1,500 square foot home, you decide that you want to charge $150, say for argument's sake, make it $155. You're passing that cost on to your client, it's not costing you anything, and it's built into the cost of your services. SPIRO has a lot of features and I can make a whole dedicated video on it, but I will give you a quick demonstration and overview of it now. If you're interested in signing up with an account for SPIRO, I do have a link and a referral code down in the description below. I'm not affiliated with or being paid by SPIRO by any means, but if you do appreciate all the information in this video that I'm putting out there and you want to help a dude out, I do appreciate if you use that referral link. I will earn some credits towards my account for any other people that sign up, so I do appreciate that. So again, my choice is SPIRO, but there are some other good alternatives out there. My next choice would be hdphotohub.com. There's also showandtour.com, which is also a great one, and also ario.com. All right, now let's get into a quick overview of SPIRO and delivering photos to our clients. All right guys, so just a quick overview of SPIRO here. This is the dashboard when you log in. It'll tell you what you have scheduled for today or tomorrow. I don't have anything scheduled. It's the weekend. I'm not working this weekend, so. And if you hop over to this little icon here, this is called the photographer portal. So this portal is very mobile friendly. It's actually designed for mobile. You can open this out on the field. So when you're out shooting, you can have your schedule here telling you, what your shoots are, where they are, and all that. So a very cool feature to help you keep organized when you're out in the field and let you know what you have going on for the day. You can actually make these for multiple photographers if you had a team of photographers, and so on and so forth, and they can log their invoices, how much they're getting paid for the shoots that they're doing, and all this stuff in here. So a lot of cool features there. Really, one of the coolest features is the shopping cart, where you can create order pages, and this will integrate into your website. So if you take a look here, this is my website here. So I have these services listed here, and if someone clicks on book now, it'll bring them to this shopping cart page that I created with SPIRO. This is all through SPIRO right here. And you can do this all for free. This doesn't cost anything. You can sign up for SPIRO for free and create all this for free. It doesn't cost you any money until you create a listing. So, so a customer can come in here and select one of these. See if they put in the address, whatever. I'm just picking a random address here. And you can pick square footage. Since my pricing is done through square footage, they can put this in here and the pricing will reflect that. So say 4,000 square feet. Is the house vacant? It's vacant. Shoot the basement? No, do not shoot the basement. Shoot the garage interior. So helpful questions there. And this will tell them the price here. You can see $825 for that. And if I hit next, entry method, is there a lockbox? If there's a lockbox, they can put that there and they put the code in here. They can give you any other entry instructions here, which is helpful. Now here's where scheduling comes in, which is really cool. So I have mine set up as preference, so they can put their first two preferences in here as far as date and time. So if I select the date here, it could be whatever day, arrive before, say they wanted it done before 12 p.m. So, again, and they could put a second date in here as an option. So if that's not available, I want you to come this day after 1 p.m. So these will give you two options here. You can set this up to be specific times, and be scheduled directly with you. Let them automatically schedule. I don't have them do that. I'll have them to suggest these times to me, and then I'll get back to them with an actual time and confirm. So this is one of the most attractive parts of this, and one of my favorite parts of this, because it helps you upsell your services. Again, we want to maximize our average sale price, so we want them to order as many services as possible. So, it brings them to this page and says, hey, maybe you want one of these other things that are being offered. And then, they're like, hey, maybe I do want to be an on-camera intro for my video. So, they could add that on here. So it just helps them see these things in front of their face, these other services that you're offering, and helps automatically just upsell these things. So then they can hit next. Again, this is just agent information. This is cool. Send text message updates about the order. They'll be notified via SMS, text messages, about their order, when their photos are ready, when you're going to the shoot, if you're using the photographer portal and all that. So just really cool features there too. And if we hit next, here we have a pop-up special offer. We actually just added this one, but this is another cool upsell feature. You can link services that will pop up here at the end and say, hey, maybe you want to do this and add this onto your order. So again, just helping you upsell. This is just the key thing about making good money in the real estate photography industry, is selling as many services and bundling as many services as possible. So they have the option to add another service here, a suggested service. So that's a really cool feature. And they can agree to the terms and conditions. You can put your terms in here as well, customize that as well. So, really cool stuff there. And then they could submit the order. So if we go back to this portal here, so that's really cool. They can, your clients can place orders on your website, through your website. It looks like it's coming from your website as well. So I just, again, really like the, user interface there and the design of it. It's really cool. I really appreciate all that. So just a lot of really good features here. I don't want to get too deep into this. Again, this is mainly more about, you know, delivering photos. So how we do that is if we go to listings, and I'm just going to go up here to create listing. So this is where you would pay, because it's $5 for a delivery page creation. This is how SPIRO makes money. It's $5, like I said, straight and forward pricing. So yes, continue listing. You know, you can put whatever. I'm gonna put 123 Main Street, Bradley Beach, whatever. It's not the address, I'm just making this up. So you can put all this other information in here. This is, you know, optional. You can put the listing value, say it's $500,000. Square footage, you could say 3,000 square feet. So agent, me, photographer was me. So you could pick all that, and then appointment date, this makes you pick that. So I'm just gonna put, you know, whatever time here. Invoicing, create invoice. Yes, we wanna create invoice. Price to agent, say $200. I'm just gonna put in here. So just hit purchase. So now here we've created our listing, and now we need to upload our photos into here. So if we go to gallery, and we're gonna go to upload, and I can choose local file. I'm just gonna go to my desktop. I have this 123 Main Street fake address. I'm just gonna upload these photos here and hit open. So now these will upload all into here. Once they're done uploading, we can take it from there. Okay, so now you can see all our photos have loaded up into the gallery here, so they're ready to go. Now if we go to landing page, we can see the address here, and then you can see these 3 images that are gonna scroll on the top, so you can just customize these. I always customize these, so if you hit edit, it'll bring up your gallery, and then you can choose your 3 favorite images you want to show at the top of the header. So obviously it automatically defaults to the first 3, so we can just uncheck these. So I'm going to scroll down here. I'm going to select one of these front ones, and then, you know, maybe one of this living room, and then one of this dining room, whatever. Just for example's sake, you can pick whatever 3 you want. I'm gonna hit apply. So now if I close landing, property info, you can put in information here, say property size, square feet, lot acreage, you know, maybe you could say 1 acre, bedroom count is 3, bathroom count is 1, property size, square feet, 5,000 for the sake of this example. And you can put whatever other information you want in here for property info. It's not even necessary that you do that. Google Maps integration, which is nice. And then contact info will be, you know, for your agent. So for their property website, it'll show their contact information. If they use the property website, they can put it out there and people can contact them and get in touch with them if they want a showing or what have you. Now if we preview this, so this is what the property website will look like. It's pretty clean, pretty simple. I like the design of it. You can see the address here, property info, gallery. So if I hit property info, and here you can see it's scrolling our 3 images that we picked. So that's cool. If we hit property info, it'll go down here. And I'll have me here as the listing agent. And then of course the gallery here where the people can view all the pictures, you know, pretty straightforward. This is Google Maps integration here, which is cool. You know, they can see the map where it is. And you know, they can even click on these things like where there gas stations nearby or coffee shops, you know, restaurants, you know, all these things will pop up on the map. So kind of a cool feature. And then again, my agent contact information here. So, you know, it's all here. And this is a property website that they'll receive, and this is what it'll look like. And this is a little share button where they can share it, you know, via email, social, whatever. So all cool little features here. So now we're ready to deliver, which we would do by hitting this button. But before we do that, I just wanted to talk about how to make the agent pay before downloading. This is a setting you have to set in the agent settings. So again, this is something really important that I was talking about earlier. I much prefer having them pay up front. In order to set that up, I'm gonna go back to my admin profile here and then go to clients and then agents, and then I'm gonna select me. And here I'm just gonna go to edit. And now I can change my agent profile settings. So every time you're gonna send something out to your agent, you're gonna make them a profile like this. So then if you scroll down here, you'll see payment plan type, and you wanna select before download, prior to immediate download. So this will make them have to pay before they get their immediate download. So that's what I want to select. And an SMS delivery notification preference every time a delivery email is sent through a listing. So once I send the email, they'll get a text which is cool as well. I always like to back up my email sending with a text, because sometimes people say, I didn't get my photos, and I'll be like, I emailed them to you, but then sometimes emails are funny and they go to spam or someone doesn't get them, so whatever. So that's great that there's an SMS automatic delivery notification. So that's how I set that agent profile up. So once you know you've set that up right, you can deliver it. So if I hit deliver here, this is just the default settings here, which is all fine. So I'm gonna send email. So it says email sent successfully. So you can see here in my text messages that I got my text that my media is ready. So you can even click the link here in the text, but I'm gonna go to my email just to show you what that looks like. So here in my email, here's the email I get that says my media is ready for 123 Main Street. And you can view the pages here. So this is the property website. They can view it here if they want to. Now if I go to view and download my media, it's saying you're being redirected to our payment portal. So once they click the link in the email, then they'll be able to see some of the images here and preview them by clicking on them. And then in order to download, you'll see this little thing here that comes up. It's telling them they have to pay now. So they'll have to click on pay now. And it says $200, which is the price we put in, and they'll have to put in their credit card information and pay. So once they do pay, this is the page they'll unlock. So you'll see, here they can download anything, web version, high resolution. So high resolution is whatever resolution you uploaded them into, and then web will downsize, for MLS friendly size. So that they could just come up here and download all of them by pressing this button. So, paying first, now they can download. So that's the whole point of this, is that they have to pay up front to be able to access this page, to be able to download their media. All right, so again, that's a brief overview of the important sort of features of SPIRO. Again, love have them pay before downloading. That's like number one. Number two is the shopping cart, which is great, helps you upsell your services. And of course the scheduling aspect and the order form for your clients to use on your website. So just a lot of great things. The photographer portal for the day of shoots, just keeping you organized, what shoots you have on your schedule for the day. So many great features. So definitely check out SPIRO. Again, I have my link and referral code down in the description below, so check that out. One thing people seem to have trouble with when starting a real estate photography business is figuring out how much they should charge. So this is something I definitely wanted to touch base on in this course. Firstly, pricing can vary significantly from area to area. So what I suggest doing is doing some market research. And what I mean by that is looking into some companies in your area that are doing real estate photography, seeing how much they charge, and using that information to gauge where you want to be with your own pricing. So to help illustrate this, let's look at an example. I picked a random city, Denver, Colorado, for this example. I live in New Jersey. I don't know anything about the real estate photography market in Denver, so I did a little research. I'll keep the names of the companies anonymous out of respect. So let's say theoretically for this example, we wanted to start a real estate photography company in the Denver area. I wanted to find out around how much people are charging in Denver to shoot a 2,000 square foot home, and I found some pricing from 7 different companies. So the lowest price in the pack that I found to shoot a 2,000 square foot home in the Denver area was $150, and the highest was $209. So now that we have that information, where do we want our pricing to be for our new real estate photography company that we're starting in Denver, Colorado? A lot of people's instinct is to price themselves lower than everybody else in order to undercut everyone and gain the most clients. Please don't be one of these people, it's a huge mistake. Firstly, you'll be attracting the worst type of clients that are cheap, complain the most, and have no loyalty. This business is all about relationships. You want to build strong, long-term relationships with people and have a loyal client base. There's many clients that I've worked with for years now that I consider friends. These are the type of relationships that you want to build in your own business. You want your pricing to reflect quality and professionalism, not a cheap bargain product. Here's what I would suggest doing. Let's average out the prices from the 7 different companies I found in Denver, Colorado to shoot a 2,000 square foot home. Just add them all up and divide by 7, and we get a price of $175.43. But just to keep things simple, let's just call it $175. That is right around where I would want to be for my price to shoot a 2,000 square foot home if I was starting a real estate photography company in the city of Denver, Colorado, based on the market research that we just did. It's in the middle of the pack, so you're communicating that you're not just another bargain photography company pricing yourself at the bottom of the barrel. You're also communicating with that price that you believe in your product, you think your product is high quality, and deserves to be priced where it is. You're also weeding out those horrible, unloyal, bargain hunting clients that will drop you in a hot second if a better deal comes along. Trust me, you don't want those clients. They're more trouble than they're worth. Instead, you're probably most likely attracting clientele that appreciates good work and values what you do for them and your relationship. There's a whole psychology behind pricing, so this is all very important to keep in mind when determining how to price your own services. Also, there are a few different ways that real estate photography companies price their photography services. The most popular ones that I've seen are either by square footage or number of images. Number of images pricing would look like 10 to 15 images is this price, 15 to 25 images is this price, and so on and so forth. I personally prefer the square footage model, and what I mean by that would be like 0 to 1,500 square feet is this price, 1,500 square feet to 2,500 square feet is this price, and so on and so forth. I prefer the square footage model simply because I don't want to be bothered with counting how many images I'm taking while I'm shooting. I have a ballpark idea how many images I take for a certain size home, so I just price it accordingly. I'd much rather be concentrating on my composition and taking good shots than trying to keep tabs on how many photos I'm taking. To me, the square footage model just saves a lot of headaches and annoyances. The house is a certain size, so it will be a certain price. That's it, end of story. It's very black and white and easy for people to understand. Another thing I want to say in regards to pricing is don't offer people a free first shoot as an incentive to try you out. This goes along with what I was saying earlier about pricing yourself lower than everybody else. You're attracting the same kind of wrong clientele that I was talking about earlier, and it just sets a bad precedent. It's just not the best way to start a business relationship with somebody. If you do want to offer an incentive, offer a discounted first shoot like 25% off or something like that. Doing the first shoot for free just sends the wrong message in my opinion. Probably the most challenging aspect of starting a real estate photography business is building a client base. I won't sugarcoat this, it will be a challenge and will undoubtedly be the biggest hurdle you have to overcome. This is the struggle I hear from people more than anything else. I wish there was some magic solution I could offer you here to overcome this obstacle, but that doesn't exist. I can give you some general advice though that may be helpful, and also don't get too discouraged. You can do this, you just need some willpower and perseverance. This may be obvious, but first and foremost, rack your brain. Do you know anybody personally that's a real estate agent or works in real estate that you can leverage? This is definitely the best and easiest way to get your foot in the door. If you do, contact them and see if they'd be willing to give you a shot and let you shoot a listing for them. If you can win them over and get them to use you, then you're on your way. Word of mouth is the #1 way to grow in this business. It's how my business has grown to where it is today. I've never done any advertising. You just gotta get a couple of clients under your belt, and if they're happy with what you're doing, they're gonna tell other agents about you, and that snowball effect will start to take place. It takes some time to build up, but you just gotta get that ball rolling. If you don't know anybody in the real estate world, don't worry. It's not a requirement in order to have a successful real estate photography business. The name of the game is simply talking to, connecting with, and getting yourself in front of as many real estate agents as you possibly can. There are a few ways you might go about doing this, and I'll go over some suggestions now. One thing you might want to do is make a list of all the real estate agencies that are operating in the area that you want to do business in. For one, it's just good to be aware of these agencies and know who your potential clients are. Take a little bit of time to drive around to these agencies during business hours, pop in and introduce yourself, tell them a little bit about your business and the services that you offer, leave them your card. A good idea maybe it would be to write a little elevator pitch sort of script that you can memorize and recite when you go into these places, or just use it as a guideline. A lot of these agencies do periodic team meetings, so if they seem receptive to you, you might want to ask if you can pop in at their next team meeting and do a little presentation and tell their team about how you might be able to help them sell properties faster and for more money. Another suggestion would be to try social media outreach, specifically Instagram. Search around and try to find agents in your area that are active and posting. Follow them and start engaging with them by liking their posts and commenting. After a little while of doing that, send them a message with maybe an example photo, tell them a little bit about your services, and offer them maybe a discounted shoot to try you out. Don't just message them a list of your services. Be creative here so it doesn't feel spammy. Maybe be humorous or something so it feels light, friendly, and memorable. Another thing you might want to try is to browse Zillow listings in your area. Try to find ones that have unprofessional photography or cell phone photos. Google the agent's name, see if you can find their contact information. Get in touch with them and offer them maybe a discounted shoot in order to help boost showings for their listing. This is a little spammy though, so tread carefully. A general piece of advice in this category too is to try to find agents that are new and starting out so that you guys can build your businesses side by side together. They probably don't have a professional photographer yet that they're using either. It's great to team up with people. That's the name of the game. You want to build strong, long-lasting relationships. Some new agents may go nowhere, but some may become brokers down the line and open their own agencies and end up giving you tons of business. I personally have like 4 or 5 of those clients that I teamed up with when they first became agents, and now they're brokers with their own agencies and they have their own agents working for them. And guess what? They're telling all their agents to call me for photography, so it's a huge win. Getting clients may seem insurmountable and overwhelming. I totally get that. It's the hardest part of this whole thing. You just need to be persistent and keep trying. You need to have the courage to put yourself out there and get yourself in front of as many agents as possible and talk to them. You're gonna get an overwhelming amount of no's and rejection, but you just need the perseverance to keep pushing forward. Once you get a handful of clients and get that word of mouth going, you'll start seeing compounding growth. One last thing I'll say on this topic too is before you start reaching out to clients, get yourself a portfolio and a website together and all that good stuff. And you might be thinking, how am I gonna get a portfolio together without any gigs? Practice on your own home, your parents' homes, your aunts and uncles' homes, whoever will let you come over and shoot their house or at least some of the rooms. It's good practice. You want to be able to be good at what you're doing before you show up to a professional gig. So get the practice in, get the portfolio together, and then start reaching out to clients. Okay, so before we wrap this course up, I just wanted to give some other general advice about running a successful real estate photography business. First, and probably the most important thing I can say, is just being kind, courteous, and accommodating to your clients. This is more important than how good your photography is. You could be the best photographer in the world, but if you don't treat people well, then nobody's going to want to work with you. As I stated in the last section, word of mouth is everything in this business. You have to wow your clients and make them feel good about you and what you're doing for them if you want them to refer you to other agents. This is paramount. One other thing I wanted to address too is offering all the services such as drone, video, floor plans, 3D tours, etc., etc. You want to eventually become a one-stop shop. You don't want your clients having to go elsewhere to get other services. This may be difficult in the beginning. Obviously, you want to just concentrate on your photography, but a good idea might be to team up with somebody in your area that's another real estate photographer maybe that offers these services and contract them out to you, maybe outsource it to them so that you're the one quarterbacking the whole thing and getting all the services done under your business name and just paying out somebody else to do it for you until the time comes when you can do all of them yourself. Offering multiple services too is really how you make the most money in this business. At every listing, the goal is to sell more than one service, so you're not just doing photography at every listing. You really want to sell more than one thing to drive up your average sale price and maximize your profits. The other thing I want to mention here is insurance. You have to have at least liability insurance, especially for a business like ours where we're going into people's homes. God forbid someone trips over your tripod and breaks their leg and they sue you, or you break someone's expensive lamp or something like that. You just want to be covered. Insurance gets trickier too when you add drone operations into the mix. I had a hard time finding one that would give me a decent rate that covered drone. Some of the quotes I was getting were like $800 a month, which is just like crazy. I did finally land on State Farm for $55 a month, which is a very reasonable rate. They've been great too, so if you're looking for a recommendation, I do recommend State Farm. I even lost a drone once and they covered it, so they've been great. One more important recommendation I wanted to make is just to keep careful track of your finances. Use an app like QuickBooks. I use QuickBooks, it's fantastic. I highly recommend it. We'll keep track of your income and expenses. We'll track your miles for you, which are a tax write-off, and we'll also tell you your quarterly estimated taxes so you can pay your estimated taxes throughout the year. I take a certain percentage of all the money I make. Say I do a job, I get paid, I take 25% of that, set it aside into another account. That money builds up over the quarter, and at the end of the quarter, I can pay my estimated quarterly taxes. This is just helpful because at the end of the year, you're not getting hit with a huge tax bill for say $30,000. You have to come up with $30,000 all of a sudden to pay your taxes. And if you haven't been putting money aside all year, you're gonna be in big trouble. So it's just hugely helpful and I highly recommend it. All right guys, this has been a hugely epic video. Thank you for joining me on this full real estate photography course. If you found it helpful, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. Also take a look down in the description below for links. I got links down there, like I mentioned in this video, to the gear recommendations. Also linked to our sponsor Pixelmob if you're looking for an outsourced editor. Great resource. Also I got links down there to editing practice packs if you're looking to practice your editing. Also sky replacement pack that I've created. There are a lot of good resources down there, so check them all out. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I'll see you again soon on the next one.